Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. I am sports mental health empowerment coach and couple marriage and family therapist, Dr. Lauren Pitts. You know who that guy is. Who is he?
Ronnie Ransome, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back. Glad to see you all again. I'm sorry I missed last week, but unfortunately, my family, we finally had our term with COVID. But we were fine for the most part. I think, I still have tested positive this week. So, I think my body is just, at this point, just trying to make me stay at home, which I mean, I'm not, hey, shout out to remote work. I'm definitely not complaining. Remote work, because God, man, I'm the one thing the pandemic has taught me, even though Joe Biden says the pandemic is over, the one thing that, the last 2 years has taught me is that, I'm grateful for the job I, was led to do, because, if I was in any other career field 2 years ago, probably would have been really treacherous,
Absolutely.
But no, we're doing better this week. Glad to be back. Missed y'all last week.
Indeed.
I watched it. I appreciate Ted holding it down.
Y'all
did a phenomenal job as always. While we were busy being, hey, look, man, them PCR tests, man, like I feel like they scraping your brain. Like, oh my Lord.
It's torture.
Man, but anyways, we got a great topic lined up for y'all today. It's football Saturday again. We got a great slate of games coming up. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to do week 4 picks last week, but we're back for week 5 this week. So we got our picks, but we also have our scores from week 3 that we didn't get a chance to go over. So we'll go over that at the end of the show. Dr. Piss is trying to get back in the game, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all know she's trying to get back in the game. But we got week 5 this week, but we got a great topic for y'all lined up today called Surviving PTSD. And no, not this time. We're not talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. This time we're talking about parental traumatic stress disorder. Unfortunately, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are relatively common. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, approximately 60% of the population reports at least one adverse childhood experience. So, can children get PTSD from their parents? And is it possible for children to show signs of PTSD because they are upset by their parents' symptoms? So trauma symptoms can also be passed from parent to child or between generations, as most of us like to call generational curses and everything.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about, well, first of all, what are the adverse childhood experiences? What are those and what that comprises of? And how most of 60% of our population has at least one, and how that can affect you if you have more than one, more than two, so on and so forth. So we're going to be talking about that. And also, if you do feel like you fall into this, what can you do about it now? So we got a great topic, like I said, lined up for you all. Also, real quick, we also want to send our, thoughts and prayers to all the families and the victims of Hurricane Ian that has been terrorizing the East Coast since Wednesday. For all of our listeners and viewers down in Florida, we hope, we're sending our thoughts and prayers to you all, hoping that you all can have a speedy recovery down there. I know there's been a lot of people, deploying down there to send their efforts and, help out and whatnot with the debris and the tarnish and everything. I saw a lot of before and after videos of, before in like Fort Myers and one of the islands, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it's one of the islands that is right off the coast of Fort Myers, where literally their entire roadway was washed away by the hurricane and everything.
Yeah, I saw that on the news. I don't remember the name of that island either, but I did see that on the news.
And even in South Carolina had their rendezvous with Hurricane Ian yesterday as it made landfall in South Carolina. So all the victims in North and South Carolina as well. We literally got rain for 24 hours straight here yesterday in Virginia. Like it started raining probably around like 8 in the morning, and it was just a slow, steady rain all day. We did get some winds though. Like the wind did get a little I think it may be about 30, 35 miles an hour up here yesterday, but for the most part, man, it was it's crazy how these storms can be. It's really crazy. So our thoughts and prayers are to the victims and families down there. We're definitely sending our thoughts and prayers to you all. And
Yeah.
yeah, Dr. Pitts.
Yeah, and just, remembering too that before Ian made landfall in the US, it beat up on Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. So certainly,
Yeah.
I mean,
Dang, that storm was around for a minute. Yeah.
yeah, we have international listeners too, so we definitely want to send our prayers to our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic as well, because Puerto Rico's been catching it. They have been
Yeah. They were still
catching
recovering.
it.
They were still recovering from the hurricane back in 2017.
Yeah. So they still were dealing with a lot of the aftermath of that 2017 hurricane that just annihilated so much of the island. So definitely want to keep them in our prayers. And folks, don't hesitate. You donate to the American Red Cross. There's a lot of our churches all over the nation, as well as other organizations that are rallying around to support and to get resources to these devastated areas. It's needed. It's needed. I, for one, have extended family and friends in Florida that were adversely impacted by the storm, and just really making sure that our loved ones are okay, and just so thankful that that we didn't experience loss of life, but there was loss of life. So you have folks that on top of everything else, now have to deal with the stages of grief because they're going through bereavement. So definitely prayers, resources, whatever you feel led to do to help these areas and these people that are so deeply impacted by this. Just, you hear me say it all the time. Meet people in a place of common humanity with an open mind and an open heart, because it could have been any of us. Could have been
Absolutely.
any of us.
Shoot, I mean, if you live
Yeah.
on the East Coast, it definitely will be you at one point or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even here in Virginia, we've definitely had our fair share of our
Yeah.
hurricanes in the past and whatnot. And they're never fun. I always tell people, not to make light of natural disasters or anything, but if I had to choose which natural disasters I want to go toe to toe with on a yearly basis, give me hurricanes though. Our listeners and viewers on the West Coast,
Fires,
earthquakes,
mudslides,
forest
earthquakes.
fires.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, nah. I'm good. I'm good on that
Yeah.
because them photos and them videos of them forest fires from the last couple of years in California,
Yeah.
ain't no way. Ain't no way. I can swim.
Mudslides, just like you see a wall of mud just coming and engulfing your house. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's real. So,
Yeah.
like we said, shout out to all our listeners and viewers down in Florida and in the East Coast that were affected by this hurricane,
Yeah.
and also our listeners in Puerto Rico, Jamaica, even Cuba. Cuba got hit really hard.
Yeah.
I
I
saw
forgot about Cuba.
I saw a video of this big boat about maybe 10 Cuban citizens using the hurricane to their advantage to get over here.
Oh.
I mean, what better time to come in, than during a hurricane, Like, well, I mean, we was out fishing, and next thing we know, here we are in Florida. I mean,
The tide brought us in.
it's high, I mean, it's high tide out here. I mean, you seen this water out here recently? Shoot, I mean, we was just trying to get some fish, but yeah, hey, welcome to America, I guess,
Indeed.
But yeah, so man, so Dr. Pitts, you have a mental health tip of the week this week?
I do, and I'm
Okay.
gonna need a minute or six, because I just had the idea. So I want to walk folks real quick. I'm gonna go through this ACEs questionnaire because I want people to be able, as they're listening, to determine if this is them. And then you said something real powerful. You talked about that multi-generational transmission and whether or not kids can suffer from PTSD from their parents. So I'm going to share a concept, which I did similarly last week, as well as part of my mental health tip. But I want to heighten people's awareness, Ronnie, with how deeply our family has the ability to impact our overall well-being with regards to our mental health and what that looks like in an athletic context. So the way that the ACEs questionnaire works, folks, is that it's a 10-question questionnaire. And for each question that you answer yes to, you're going to give yourself a point. And the maximum amount of points that you get is 10. And of course, the closer you are to 10, the more likely that adverse childhood experiences are going to negatively impact you in adulthood. And then, we'll talk more about that in later shows and what have you. So the first question is did or does a parent or other adult in the household often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Yes or no? I got to take my glasses off. I can't see. Did or does a parent or other adult in the household often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Yes or no? If yes, give yourself a point. Did or does an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touch their body in a sexual way, or try to or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal sex with you? If yes, give yourself a point. Did or do you often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Yes or no? Did or do you often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you? Or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Yes or no? Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Yes or no? Was or is your mother or stepmother often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes or often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Yes or no? Did or do you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? Yes or no? Was or is a household member depressed or have mental health issues, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yes or no? Did a household member go to prison? Yes or no? If you answered yes to the majority of those questions, then it is a strong possibility that you are seeing the impact of adverse childhood experiences in adulthood. But I want to take it one step further. And Ronnie, I want to walk through this concept of family projection process very quickly. The family projection process describes the primary way parents transmit their emotional problems to a child. The projection process can impair the functioning of one or more children and increase their vulnerability to clinical symptoms. Children inherit many types of problems as well as strengths through their relationships with their parents. But the problems they inherit that most affect their lives are relationship sensitivities, such as heightened needs for attention and approval, difficulty dealing with expectations, the tendency to blame oneself or others, feeling responsible for the happiness of others or that others are responsible for one's own happiness, and acting impulsively to relieve the anxiety of the moment rather than tolerating anxiety and acting thoughtfully. If the projection process is fairly intense, the child develops stronger relationship sensitivities than his or her parents. The sensitivities increase the person's vulnerability to symptoms by fostering behaviors that escalate chronic anxiety in a relationship system. The projection process follows 3 steps. Number 1, the parent focuses on a child out of fear that something is wrong with the child. Number 2, the parent interprets the child's behavior as confirming the fear. And number 3, the parent treats the child as if something is really wrong with the child. These steps of scanning, diagnosing, and treating begin early in the child's life and continue. The parent's fears and perceptions so shape the child's development and behavior that he or she grows to embody their fears and perceptions. One reason the projection process is a self-fulfilling prophecy is that parents try to fix the problem they have diagnosed in the child. For example, perceiving a child to have low self-esteem, parents repeatedly try to affirm the child, and the child's self-esteem grows dependent upon their affirmation. Parents often feel they have not given enough love, attention, or support to a child manifesting problems. Rather, they have invested more time, energy, and worry in this child than in his or her siblings. The siblings less involved in the family projection process have a more mature and reality-based relationship with their parents. This fosters the siblings developing into less needy, less reactive, and more goal-directed people. Both parents participate equally in the family projection process, but in different ways. If the mother is the primary caregiver, she is more prone than the father to excessive emotional involvement with one or more of the children. The father typically occupies the outside position in the parental triangle, except during periods of heightened tension in the mother-child relationship. Both parents are unsure of themselves in relationship to the child, but commonly one parent acts sure of himself or herself and the other parent goes along. The intensity of the projection process is unrelated to the amount of time the parents spend with a child. So here's my tip, Ronnie. If you found that you scored higher on that ACEs questionnaire that I asked you, or if any of this information that I just shared regarding to the family projection process hit home and squirted you all in the face with my clinical hose, you need to be getting into therapy. You need to see a clinician, whether it be a couple marriage and family therapist, a mental health professional, a licensed clinical social worker. You need to consider seeing someone to help you to navigate all of this so that you have a better understanding of how all of this information is informing how you relate to yourself, which also directly impacts how you relate to others, because it runs deep. It is systemic. You hear us talking about that term almost every show, and you have to get clear on how your stuff is impacting your child's stuff and what that looks like over time and how that morphs into a multi-generational problem, or for those that are you that operate from a spiritual foundation, what that looks like within the context of a generational curse.
And thank you for that, Dr. Pitts. And I mean, so I remember first hearing about the ACEs study back in 2017 was the first time I heard of it.
Mhm.
And it was in my master's program. And I took the test, and I think I scored 3 out of 10.
I was a 7.
7. I know some people who were 8, 9s out of 10. We actually had a classmate who was 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
They were honest about their score, and they said, yeah, I'm an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you mentioned it, but I remember the first time I heard about it. They said that if you scored at least a 3 out of 10, you were 1,600% times more likely to use substances or have bad physical health and stuff like that. If you had a score of 4 or more, I think the number jumped up to like 3,400% times more likely to use substances, have poor health, and have some underlying health conditions as a result of your adverse childhood experiences. And I think, I think for a lot of us out there, it says 60% of the population has at least one. I would like to think that at least now that number is at least almost 100% now.
I would agree. And I think it's higher in Black and Brown communities too. I think that there needs to be an ACEs study culturally that focuses specifically on Black and Brown communities, with even greater emphasis on what ACEs looks like in impoverished communities and homes. It's
honestly, I don't.
It's alarming.
It's beyond alarming, and I think I think we see it all the time. We see on the news, we hear about these communities, these underserved and underprivileged communities, where they don't have natural resources. Like just look down in Jackson, Mississippi. They didn't have clean water for about almost a week and a half or something like that. It's probably been longer than that before it was reported. But like, imagine being in a community where you don't even have clean water, but you're expected to go about your day and be a productive, and happy citizen in this country, knowing that, when I go home, I probably can't take a bath if I don't have bottled water. I can't brush my teeth. I can't use anything if I don't have bottled water, because the water that I pay taxes on that's supposed to provide me and my family looks like it came straight out of a sewer, So yeah, I probably wouldn't be thinking in a happy, productive state of mind
Mm-hmm.
if I can't even get a basic necessity. And we
Yeah.
know when people don't have basic necessities, they live in survival mode. And
Yeah.
we know that people who live in survival mode, it's all about self-preservation.
Right.
They're
Right. It's
going
dangerous. That's it.
it's very dangerous.
It's a dangerous way to live physically, but it's also a very dangerous and toxic way to live mentally.
How many people do we know that get stuck in survival mode?
Absolutely.
A lot of the
Absolutely. We
time,
see it all the time in our work, all
yeah,
the time.
a lot of the time, and I tell people all the time, it's like, and I'll say that even in the mental health field, I always tell people, like, even as a therapist, even when I was a community counselor, working in the community,
Mm-hmm.
working with clients in their environments, in their homes, seeing what they're seeing, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the one thing that people fail to realize is, like, even with therapy, and therapy can be very therapeutic and help somebody understand what's going on
Yeah.
around them.
Yeah.
But what therapy does not do and cannot do is therapy cannot provide the tangible resources that these communities
Right.
need to pull themselves up out of this abyss that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
We can
I,
help you become aware of the situation and become aware
right.
of your surroundings, but therapy does not provide tangible resources.
Right.
What therapy can provide, though, is for you to find and help put tangible resources in your community, but that has to
Exactly.
be a collective effort.
And they have
And
to be
fun
there to be found.
Exactly. And so when we see these communities that don't have jobs, don't have, safe schools, safe
Yeah.
environments, safe playgrounds, grocery stores that are actually having,
Mm-hmm.
food that's not killing you, faster than just breathing,
Yeah.
things like that. When you don't have those communities, it's all about self-preservation.
Yeah.
I can't fault somebody for always being stuck in survival mode if that's all they know, if
That's
they've
real.
never been given a chance to live in thrive mode.
Right.
Like, a lot of times we
You
get stuck
imitate
in.
your atmosphere. You do what you know, and when you look at how that translates into how a person is showing up in their athletic performance, and it was several shows ago, but you were talking about um, a teammate who had an episode um, on the bus during one of your
Yep.
away games, and the bottom line was folk had no idea. Folk
Yeah.
had no idea what that player was having to deal with back home and how that was impacting him, though he was away at college. And people don't. People
Right.
are oblivious. They are oblivious to the fact that people have a story.
Yeah.
Everybody has a story.
I think when the show Last Chance U first came out on Netflix back in 2017, and in the school, East Mississippi Community College down there,
Mm-hmm.
look at all those kids who were 4 and 5 star athletes in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw success, they saw the what they wanted. But what do we know about
Mm-hmm.
people who can trick themselves out of their own spot, can trick themselves out of
Mm-hmm.
position? We
Yeah.
know that when people are so used to bad, that good becomes bad. Like,
Yeah.
bad becomes normal
Don't even know
and
how to
good
handle
becomes
it
bad.
when it comes. Think they're waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time.
Exactly. So it's like, I always hear people say who go through adverse childhood experiences and are adults
Mm-hmm.
now who haven't addressed those childhood experiences. They just kind of like put them behind them. Like, well, if I put this behind me far
It's
enough
gonna
and
go
long enough,
away.
it'll go away and I don't have to think about it. And what they fail to realize is that, those adverse childhood experiences turn into adverse adult experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I
Indeed.
always tell people, that same kid who didn't have help becomes that same adult who's crying for help, who doesn't
That's
realize
right.
that the help starts within them.
That's right.
But because that help has never been fostered within themselves, because that self-awareness has never been fostered and nurtured
Mm-hmm.
and cared for, they don't understand that.
Right.
And one thing I always hear people say who go through these adverse childhood experiences is that happiness seems always far and fleeting.
Yeah.
Like, they've never experienced happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And I always and I empathetically push back on it, because I truly believe that, when we get so used to being fixated on bad, even when we go through good things, it's not that we can't enjoy the good thing. It's not that we don't recognize the good thing. It's just like what you said.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as that good thing happens, we automatically, subconsciously, automatically start to think, well, how long is this going to last? Or
Mm-hmm.
when am I going to mess this up? So you take an athlete who, puts themselves in position to get out of their community, get out of their environment, and you put them in an environment where it's everything they could have wanted. Clean dorm, food every day, hot food every day, multiple times a day, clean clothes on demand and stuff like that. When you put them in a position like that, are there some instances where athletes, can kind of self-sabotage and trick themselves out of that spot? Absolutely. Yeah. It's because it's not that they don't appreciate it. It's just the fact that how long is this going to last before somebody takes this away from me or before I mess this up? Right. Because everything to them becomes ultimatum thinking or catastrophic thinking.
Rooted in fear.
Exactly. And when you make decisions based out of fear or fear of missing out on something, you will always feel like every time is the last time. And if every time is the last time, then if I don't do this, then I'm not going to feel complete. I'm not going to feel fulfilled. I'm not going to feel like I got what I wanted out of it. Yeah. And after a while, you get like that. It's like you can't find yourself to appreciate anything.
Right.
And that's a draining feeling. That's a very hard feeling. And then imagine carrying that, going to college and having to go out and perform in your sport at the top of your abilities.
With all that craziness still going on back home.
Exactly. And then those same adverse childhood experiences that happen in real life happen in the sports world too.
Right.
What happens when you're the man of your town, you're the all-state person, you go to a school where everybody's all-state. And now you have to ride the bench for 2 years because you got 2 All-Americans in front of you.
Right.
Who are going to get playing time.
Right. And folk back home sweating you because you're not getting any playing time.
What happens when you get that refund check and you got to send that money back home? Because if you don't send that money back home, license is going to be out and you're going to have no food, whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying that's every person's situation. It can be something that's
it's some. It's definitely some.
It definitely is some, absolutely. It also can be, the middle class kid who, parents put these expectations of them being, academic, standout. And, assuming the expectations of their parents without ever be given the chance to form their own expectations of themselves.
Right.
They automatically assume the expectations of their parents. And we know sometimes parents' expectations can seem unrealistic at times because sometimes parents' expectations are the expectations they have for themselves but couldn't accomplish, so they push it onto their kid to do.
We talk about that all the time.
I wasn't able to do this, but if I give you the blueprint, this is exactly how you should be able to do this. Never acknowledging or never taking into consideration that maybe this isn't what my kid wants.
Right.
Or maybe this path isn't how my kid needs to get there. Maybe there's a different way to get there for them.
Right.
But if you don't give that kid the chance, to form their own expectations, form their own goals and aspirations, and they just live for you, and they just live off your expectations, well, we know expectations change all the time.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden my parents' expectations go from I'm stout and stern on you on grades to, oh, well, you're trying. Hold on, what you mean? You're not gonna yell at me?
Right.
I just sat there and yelled at myself all week because I got a C on my test, and you like, oh, it's okay, you tried? Where the hell was that at 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Where was that at when I was in high school? Where was that at when soon as I would get home from practice? You would yell at me about that. See, a lot of times parents don't understand that these kids go through these things and they think about these things on their mind. So when they get on their own, I always tell people, when you give a kid a chance to be on their own for the first time, they will always resort back to what they saw growing up.
Yeah.
How did my mom handle the situation? How did my mom handle not having no money? She was stressed out. She was upset. She was yelling. She was cursing. She always had an attitude. How did my dad handle a long day at work? He would come home, grab a beer out the fridge, sit down, tell everybody to leave me the hell alone until I'm ready to talk.
Yeah.
And so is that what I need to do? Do I need to be irritable and angry and not figure out a way? People don't realize that, yes, kids just don't learn this stuff out of thin air. Like, yes, once kids get to a certain age, does their environment, does what they see on social media and stuff have a bigger influence over them than maybe their parents? Yeah, eventually. But those formative years, those first about 5-10 years, parents, I want you to know your kids are watching and listening.
They're sponges.
Yeah.
I think I agree I agree in part to the social media influence. And the reason why I say that is because, people spend a lot of time on social media. But at the end of the day, this formation of who each person is individually started from in the womb. And what a lot of people, when you look at the role of genetics, when you look at some of these athletes were kids that suffer trauma in utero because, substance use and abuse, because of environmental factors, because of medical conditions, the whole 9 yards. When we'll get more into it later on in the season, when we're talking more about how attachment impacts, the development of a child and what that looks like in relationship to athletic performance. But when you look at how even in utero, the fetus can hear, it's impacted by all of this environmental stuff. And I tell people all the time, babies can have bad nerves. Dr. Pitts, I'm trying to tell you, babies can be anxious. Babies can have.
I'm glad you brought that. Can I chime in for a second?
Please go right ahead.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up. So look, people, go on YouTube. There's this. He's a physicist, like mental health, like he a very smart dude. His name is Gabor Mate, and it is GABORMATE. But he talks about the impacts of ADHD on children and stuff like that. And he talks so beautifully about it. And it's really changed my perspective on ADHD. We talk about this all the time, as clinicians and stuff like that. A lot of the times when we make, our clinical impressions on somebody's, presenting symptoms and stuff like that, we base a lot of our thought and judgment based off the DSM or the Diagnostic Statistical Manual and stuff like that. And that helps us understand, behaviors and stuff like that and help form a diagnosis. Unfortunately, what it doesn't do, it doesn't explain the why. And, when we think about something so simple as ADHD, it's a buzzword now. Everybody's ADHD and stuff like that, But ADHD is a fancy way to describe a trauma response to concern and worry about finishing something or doing something. And so when we talk about kids being distracted and inattentive and hyperactive and stuff like that, what we're seeing is kids have perceived something. They have perceived an event, they've perceived a situation, person, whatever the case may be, that causes them great concern and worry about how they'll go about handling that situation. And as opposed to putting the mental resources and capacity to figuring that out, what can I do to distract myself from thinking about it or having to worry about it? Well, I can be inattentive. I can be hyperactive. I can be all over the place. I can be bouncing around. I can be doing this and going to do that. I can be fidgety. I can be doing anything that my mind will possibly think of to distract myself from what I have to do.
And what you feed grows, and your mind gets conditioned to avoid.
Exactly. And another thing, our female listeners out there, I want you to also understand this too, especially for those who, decide to, breastfeed and things like that, and, kind of have a holistic, childbirth, whatever the case may be. But understand this, especially for our women out there and for the women who have sons. And this is really important. I always tell people, as much as, and daughters too, but kids can really feel off their mother's nerves. And especially when they're breastfeeding, and those extra doses of serotonin, of all the other neuroreceptors that can go through our blood and stuff like that. When you are connecting with your kid feeds off of that too. And so a lot of the times we see babies who become nervous, they cry a lot or something like that, or they just naturally seem nervous and stuff like that. That's not just by happenstance. It's not just by, chance. That's genetics. That's being passed down. We see so many times in our community. I can't think of the lady's name. I'll always forget her. I think you know her name. She's a professor at, I want to say, Eastern Washington University or whatever the case may be. But she has this term called PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Didn't we have her on the show a couple of years ago? I think I know who you're talking about. I think we had her.
Might have.
It was like November, December.
We might
I think
have.
we
I
had her
cannot.
on back in 2018, 19. I think
I
we had
can't.
her. And I
I
could, and I'm forgive me, I'm drawing a blank on her name too, but I think we had her. I think we had her and two of her colleagues on.
She came. I remember she came to if because I remember she came to Virginia State in 2019 and talked
Mm-hmm.
to us on campus, and she
Mm-hmm.
presented this idea of post-traumatic slave syndrome. And in a
Mm-hmm.
nutshell, basically what she was saying is that it would be a fool for anybody to think that when you oppress a certain, race of people
Yeah.
for the centuries that, African Americans were oppressed for, that there's not any type of repercussions and consequences for the generations after. And just even look at what's going on since Jim Crow. Let's how the black family has been, well, they tried to destabilize the black family, but in all reality, if you look at the numbers, there's more two-parent households in the black community than any other race in the country, but they don't want to talk about that. But
Mm-hmm.
what I'm trying to say is also that for a long time, they tried to destabilize the black household, removing the man out of the house so women could get welfare checks and welfare benefits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you had a man in there, why do you need this? But in all
Mm-hmm.
reality, even if the man is in there, how many times did black men have to swallow their pride just to bring home a few dollars that they were already being underpaid to their white counterparts? And they don't think that doesn't bother the black man or doesn't make him angry, doesn't make him irritable, doesn't make him feel powerless to his family. And then you have
Mm-hmm.
the black woman over here looking at this man like, we need food, we need this, we need that. Why aren't you providing? And you start to create this dissension and tension between the black communities and the black families and try to destabilize them. And they don't think that doesn't have an impact. They don't think that doesn't trickle down into the community, into the generations behind them. When in all reality it does. And we see
Absolutely.
how this plays out in real time. We see how a lot of there's things that we're talking about in these generations that your parents were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
that their parents were talking about. And you sit there and be like, damn, we've been talking about the same things for 100 years now. Ain't nothing changed. And I think the one thing that we fail to realize is like as the generations, as society changes, comfort and complacency becomes more at the forefront. So why would I get you to address your childhood trauma if I can make your life comfortable now in a way where you don't have to?
Mm-hmm.
I can make you miserably comfortable.
The discomfort, dis-ease, and discontent of the uncomfortable comfort zone.
Yep.
And people become, and I've said this on several shows, that fear and anxiety are the outer perimeter of your uncomfortable comfort zone. But people are so afraid to step outside of what they know. And so much of what they know is that trauma response. But
Yep.
then when you look at how that plays out in the athletic arena, it reminds me of the quote from The Blind Side. Coach Cotton said during spring practice, he said, a lot of times these kids from adverse circumstances can't wait to get on the field to hit somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all of that anger, all of that aggression, all of that hostility, oftentimes you see, and it's not just in football. We see aggression come out in a number of different sports, as well as behavior off of the field or off of the basketball court or whatever the case may be, because children imitate their atmosphere, and children grow up to be adolescents, and adolescents grow up to be young adults, and young adults grow up to be youth.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
it doesn't just miraculously go away. So when we look at all of these unresolved adverse childhood experiences that don't get addressed as you're advancing through the life cycle, and now you're in a position where you have a child that's engaged in sports and you are involved, but depending on how you're involved, really has the ability to impact how much joy and fulfillment your child gets out of the sport. From a positive aspect, positive involvement from parents can boost self-confidence, can boost self-esteem, can be a catalyst to your child being more motivated and having more acceptable or clinically what we call pro-social behaviors, those appropriate social skills that help them to have positive development and positive learning experiences. It's the valuable skills that children need to have facilitated by their parents. But if you as parents have all of this baggage, all of the bricks in your backpack, this is the way I describe it to my clients when we talk about, post-traumatic parents and what that looks like. I said, we're all born, and we get to that age where we, late toddler years, you have your little red, boys might have their little red wagon or their little Tonka truck, and girls have their little baby carriage. And parents with all of these unresolved issues, in essence, are putting bricks in your wagon or your Tonka truck and bricks in your baby carriage. And then you start school. And now you have social bricks that are being added to your Tonka truck and your wagon and to your baby carriage, but you still have all this unresolved issues in your home. So more bricks. And then you advance through childhood, and in your later childhood years, now you have so much bricks that you have to get a wheelbarrow, right? So the baby carriage and the Tonka truck and the red wagon is now, you got your little wheelbarrow, and socially more bricks, and then parental and community more bricks, and you're advancing through the stages of the life cycle, and you get to your middle school age, and now that social tip is on a whole nother level. So now you got cinder blocks in your barrel, right? And then you're going to high school, and now you're really getting into that intimate partner exchange and sexual identity and orientation, and now the athletic involvement is on a whole nother level, because I need to be able to go to college on an athletic scholarship, because that's what it's going to take to get me out of here. And you're advancing. And Ronnie, by the time folks get to college, they have a flatbed truck full of all of this unresolved issue, that the root of it is this multi-generational transmission that in some cases goes back to great grandparents, and you bring it forward. And oftentimes, because what you feed grows and it doesn't get addressed, with every generation it gets worse. So the bricks get bigger, and the load gets heavier, and the adverse effect of the weight gets more intense. And now you're in college, and we use Hernandez as a lot of, because textbook case study, man. Textbook case study for us as clinicians, right? So now you have, for example, an Aaron Hernandez, who you can go back and you look at the documentary and you see that by the time he got to college, he had a tractor trailer full.
Right.
He had a tractor trailer full of adverse childhood experiences, that it was just loaded on and 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 loaded on, and nobody was dealing with anything. But it stemmed from generations. When you listen to that documentary and they talk about the relationship with his dad and the demands that were put on him by his dad, come on, man, come on. There has to be, and let's face it, I'm gonna take a step back for a minute, because I don't want you to think for a moment, because I love when I get my hate mail, right? I don't want anybody to think for a moment that what we're saying is that the adversities of the parent become an excuse to the adverse behavior. What Ronnie and I are doing today is explaining the why. You can't confront something, you can't conquer something that you don't even acknowledge is a problem. You have to be willing to acknowledge the why of something. Why did an addict become an addict? Why did an alcoholic become an alcoholic? Why did the mental illness happen? Why? Why is this person so full of rage and anger? Why? Why is domestic violence a problem? It's October, baby. This is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Why? Why? You know why? Because ain't nobody dealing with nothing. Ain't nobody dealing with nothing. Everybody want to sweep everything under the rug and act like, oh, I'm good. No, you're not. And if you don't make a conscious decision to deal with the bricks in your own backpack and wheelbarrow and flatbed truck and rider truck with the lift gate and the tractor trailer, you're going to keep effing your kids up. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to be 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 years old. My oldest client, Ronnie, throughout the course of my career was 85 years old. And I applaud that individual for finally making the decision to say, I'm tired of being effed up. Dr. Pitts, help me. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. When you gonna make a decision for you? When you gonna make a decision to stop being broken? When are you gonna make a decision to stop operating from a place of woundedness every minute of every day of your life and then wondering why your kid's acting crazy? Why?
It's real out here. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. And I think, it's never too late to make the choice to understand that, you know what, maybe I don't have it all figured out. Maybe I haven't been doing this the right way. Maybe there is a different way, And I think a lot of that stems from people having that self-confidence and that self-love of, I can be different. I can change. It's unfortunate that, people have to go through what they have to go through. The only way I can kind of deduce it to is, sometimes life isn't always fair.
Life ain't never fair.
The world isn't always, peaches and creams and sunsets and valleys and all that type of stuff. Doesn't mean those things don't exist in the world. However, it's not all the world is comprised of. And so I think, the one thing I always say, to my clients who are teenagers and stuff like that, and I'm like, the one thing that you have to begin to prepare for, whether you want to or not, and hopefully, ideally, your parents should have already prepared you for this or begun to prepare you for this, but we know that it doesn't always happen all the time. The one thing that kids fail to realize is that, you can have a career and, have a financial plan and stuff like that. And that's good. You should definitely have one of those. But you should also know, or at least begin to know, how to handle your emotions on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Because as an adult, I always tell people, you can't control your emotions. Your emotions, they come and go. They're like waves. Mm-hmm. You have little waves, little emotions. You have big waves, tidal waves. You have blow-ups, intense moments, all those things. Those come and go. You can't control them. But what you can control is how you express those emotions, how you make decisions with those emotions. You can control that. Your thoughts and feelings, hey, those come and go. We have a million thoughts that come and go in our mind. We feel a whole bunch of feelings every day. Don't ignore the feelings. What are those feelings trying to tell you? I always tell people, think of your feelings like an alarm system.
That's real.
Your feelings are almost like if you have a very nice car, like a Rolls Royce or something like that, all the bells and whistles. Your emotions are those bells and whistles that come with these nice cars.
Yeah.
The lane departure warnings. That's the feeling of anxiety, the feeling, I need to be mindful of my surroundings and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. To be mindful of the people and what I'm doing. That anger and stuff like that. That's almost like when you get hurt in the airbag. Like they're catching you like, hey, bro, hey, somebody's trying to hurt you. We need to respond. We need to do something. Mm-hmm. So don't ignore your feelings. What are your feelings trying to tell you? Because your feelings are trying to tell you, hey, bro, something's going on outside of you. You're having an external force right now that's trying to, tell you something. What is it trying to tell you? And then take from that and make a decision.
Ronnie, can I piggyback on that? Because I literally just had this conversation with a client yesterday. Some of my approach to wellness is people think it's unorthodox. I'm okay with that because life is unorthodox. Let me just go ahead and say that. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. People are afraid. I don't want to deal with those feelings right now. You are dealing with them. You're just not dealing with them in a healthy way. Not dealing is still dealing, right? It's just like, you're not answering me. I did. Silence is an answer. Not addressing your feelings is addressing your feelings. It's just addressing them in an unhealthy, counterproductive way to your overall well-being. So, and here's the crazy part, Ronnie. I tell people, You ever had your heart broken? Well, yeah. You ever been, anger is a secondary emotion. You ever been disappointed, embarrassed, ashamed, humiliated, fearful, whatever the case may be. You've had all of those feelings before. You've had them. Are you still here? Yeah. They didn't kill you. They didn't kill you. You're not in the hospital on life support because somebody broke your heart. You're not, you aren't, hemorrhaging because you got fired. You aren't, you didn't have to go to bankruptcy court because somebody cheated on you. Stop tripping. Grow up. Emotions happen. Life happens. Life is full of ebbs and flows and peaks and valleys and all types of stuff. You're talking to somebody who has experienced heartbreak and who has caused heartbreak. You're talking to somebody that has lied and that has been lied to. You're talking to somebody that's been broke, and you're talking to somebody that's been financially well off. You're talking to somebody that's quit, and you're talking to somebody that's been fired. You're talking to somebody that has been embarrassed, ashamed, humiliated, and all of those stuff. And come on, man. Come on. Why everybody want to be a pie back when it comes to their feelings? That's not clinical. That's just Lauren. But stop. Dude, oh my God. What's going to happen? What's going to happen if you say, you know what? You hurt me. You know what? I'm offended. You know what? I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm humiliated. I feel disrespected. If you, Ronnie, I have a metaphor. I think it's a metaphor, analogy, whichever one of them, an analogy. I'm put the hay down where the goats can get it, Ronnie. You can be like, Dr. Pitts, shut up. I will not. Here you go. People walk through life choosing to be prostitutes to their emotions. And the situation, circumstance, or event that yields whatever the emotion is that people are afraid to address is their pimp. When you gonna stop choosing to be an emotional prostitute to the pimps of your life? When you gonna stop? Acknowledge it, confront it, conquer it, and move the heck on. Take your power back and stop choosing to navigate life like you're pie filling. You are doing yourself a tremendous disservice when you don't man up and woman up or girl up and boy up and acknowledge that life is full of emotional experiences. They're not going away. They're going to keep happening whether you decide to deal with them properly or not. So you might as well deal with them properly because they're not going nowhere. And what you don't realize is by not dealing with them properly, you're feeding more of the negative emotional experience. Here's the comparison, then I'm a hush. We have morals, values, and belief systems that govern our lives, or not, but they govern our lives just the same. Here's a relationship between your morals, your values, and your belief system. 9 times out of 10, when you have a positive emotional experience, Ronnie, it's because your values are being honored. When you have a negative emotional experience, it's because one of your values is being dishonored. If you don't acknowledge properly that negative emotional experience that you're having because you don't have boundaries in place to honor your values the way they should be honored, it's going to morph on you and it's going to create emotional pain. But you staying in that place of emotional pain is not the fault of the person, place, or thing that caused you to pain. It's yours. You're choosing to stay bound to the circumstances that yielded the negative emotional experience. That's all I got, Ron. I'm shutting up. I ain't got nothing else to say until you tell me to close this out.
That's real, man. I ain't gonna try to talk over that point. That's real right there. That's real. Well, look, y'all, we got these picks that we got to do real quick. So going back to week 3, me and Dr. Pitts both had a record of 6-4. Dr. Pitts finally got on the winning side of things. So, there might be some hope for her. As you were talking, we were talking about adverse childhood experiences, and you asked off those questions, the 10 questions that determine, if it's a yes or not. I think when they redo it, I think they should revise it and add an 11th question, and it has to be, something along the lines of, have you wasted the last at least 3 decades of your life rooting for mediocrity and believing that things could change? If so, because delusions are a real thing, and that's a real concern. And sometimes people don't recognize the delusional views and thoughts until somebody points it out. And even then, sometimes that's met with resistance, and that's fine. That lets me know that you're not just succumbing to something. You have to believe it.
Let me ask you a question about that mindset. So what does one say to because there's 32 NFL teams, for example, right? I'm not suggesting for a moment that you were talking about a football team, but let's just say hypothetically, there's 32 NFL teams, right? Mm-hmm. And right. What we know to be true is that there are a number of those NFL teams that have never gone to the Super Bowl, have 0 rings. Right. Are you suggesting that, because I'm about to connect the dots for y'all. I'm going to do this for a beautiful reframe, right? Are you suggesting that those fans should not maintain hope that one day their team is going to actually get the right formula and bring home a championship for them? Because I know the Eagles fans was hyped, right, back in 2017, right? Folks said that it was never going to happen, and people have so much hate. The Eagles earned that in 2017. They did the darn thing. They sure enough didn't think that they was going to beat Tom Brady, but they did with the Philly special. They did that thing, and people still would not give them credit where credit was due. But since we're talking about parents, let's connect it to parents, shall we? Your child is playing for a team that never loses, that never wins, never. Are you going to continue to encourage your child to do their level best? Are you going to go to the game and are you going to talk smack and root again? No, you're going to maintain hope regardless of how much hate exists around you, because you maintain hope that somehow, some way, somewhere, somebody is going to figure out a formula to get the win. You can't not hope. You have to. Because if you don't, then you're just walking around with a defeatist mindset. You would have never, ever, ever continued to play on a team that, if everybody that loved you and cared about you was like, Ronnie, I don't know why you playing for Virginia. You know this stuff. You would have been like, shut up. Would you not? That's what I thought. Go ahead and get these picks, because we're going to go over time, because I got to close us out with this here topic. What's the picks, man? Stop talking about my Cowboys. I'm going to the game tomorrow too, Ronnie, and I'm FaceTiming you.
Uh-oh. You know the greatest trick the devil played was having people think he never
I'm going to the game tomorrow, Ronnie, and I'm FaceTiming you.
All right. So our first game, we have Lane College versus Tennessee State. Now, Lane is at 2-2, and Tennessee State is at 0-3. Coach Eddie George is not having a great start to his first year. So who you got, Dr. Pitts?
Lane.
All right. I'm going to say Tennessee State. I'm going to say he gets on the board this week. All right, we got 1-2 Bethune-Cookman versus 0-4 Alabama A&M.
Ooh. Cookman.
All right. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take Bethune-Cookman too. I'm going to take Bethune-Cookman as well. All right. We have 0-4 Mississippi Valley versus 2-2 FAMU.
You know I always go with FAM.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm a rock.
I always go with FAM.
I'm a rock with FAMU as well.
And if excuse me, I've been trying to get in touch with their athletic director, Michael Smith. If you're listening, I need you to call me. We used to work together back in the day when I was at FAM. I've been trying to get in touch with him unsuccessfully. I need him.
Please hit us up, sir. We're trying to get in contact with you, man.
I need him to call Ronnie.
We got 2-2 Alabama State versus 1-3 Texas Southern.
State.
ASU. I'm gonna take ASU as well. We got Livingstone versus Bowie. Now Livingstone is 1-3. Bowie is 2-2.
Bully.
And honestly, I didn't,
I know you don't like to go with bully, but I'm going.
I'm gonna go with Livingstone for the upset. That's my upset of the week.
Okay.
We got 1-3. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2-2 Tuskegee versus 1-3 Clark Atlanta.
Tuskegee.
Tuskegee. We'll take Tuskegee as well. All right, we have 2-2 Shaw versus 3-1 Virginia State. I don't know.
Going Virginia State. I want coach to beat us up and never come on the show again.
Shaw beat. So, little fun fact: Shaw beat Bowie last week, so this should be an interesting. This might not be much of a cakewalk for Virginia State this week. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
We got 4-0 Union versus 0-4 St. Augs.
Union.
We have 1-3 Miles versus 3-1 Albany State.
Albany State.
And last but not least, we have 2-2 Prairie View versus 1-3 Grambling.
Prairie View.
Prairie View. I'm gonna take Grambling in this one. All right, Dr. Pitts, go ahead and close us out.
All right, folks. So bottom line here is that we need parents to be more, first and foremost, more conscientious of how their own baggage is impacting how they're showing up for their children. A lot of times when you have all of this unresolved issue of your own, it puts you in a position to unconsciously create pressure and stress on your kids with regards to their athletic performance. And then you focus so much on winning rather than putting the emphasis on learning and participation that you disrupt your child who already has baggage because they're absorbing some of your baggage. So I'm just going to give you the quick bullet points of parental do's and don'ts. So do's: encourage and motivate your child to develop skills and self-realization about the skills they possess and can achieve. This will add to their confidence and thus transfer such skills in their everyday lives. Parents need to put faith in the coach's methods. If both together convey similar messages to the athlete, they won't get confused. They'll have time, will place their energy and efforts on working toward goals set by their parents and the coaches. Extend your endless emotional and tangible support to your child. This gives an assurance to the child athlete that they got their back whenever required, or that you have their back whenever required. Things that we don't want you to do. We don't want you to keep not addressing your issues as a parent. That's what. We don't want you to become over involved in the athletic performance of your child, anything in excess. Although it's a way of showing care, support, and affection towards your athlete, there has to be some balance, because there's a fine line between supporting your athlete and being over involved. Don't stress them out by putting too much pressure on winning or success. Allow them to enjoy and learn from their athletic performance and play, because pressure is a detriment to the fun and performance of your student athlete. Avoid giving unnecessary guidance to your student athlete. Conflicting messages from coaches and parents will leave them in a chaotic situation, and they need to be able to play the sport with a clear mind. If parents disagree with the coaches, talk to the coach rather than to your athlete. Just remember, folks, you have the ability to be a positive and productive support system for your athlete that builds self-esteem, that helps them to deal with the stress of play more effectively, that helps them to do amazing and extraordinary things in their athletic performance. Look, folks, that's it. That's all we have today. I feel like I gave you a mouthful. Hose, you went over by 4 minutes. It's like we're not on,
It's all good.
Yet, right?
It's all good.
I really am FaceTiming Ronnie from the game tomorrow. I'm gonna put video, win, lose, or draw.
Who y'all play tomorrow?
Commanders.
Oh yeah, that's right. Y'all should
draw.
win.
I'm putting video on Facebook tomorrow, people, so that you can see me at the game, all cowboy geared up, and I'm FaceTiming Ronnie Ransome.
What time is y'all game?
We play at 12 o'clock noon, so 1 o'clock y'all's time.
Oh, y'all
so
1
here's
o'clock
one more
game.
thing,
Okay.
Ronnie. Today's my baby sister's birthday.
Well, happy birthday, baby sister.
So happy birthday to Tamara Lee Braxton, aka Tata. It's my baby sister's birthday, so happy birthday to her. I know she was talking about turning up. She had a special glass decorated the whole 9 yards. I'm gonna need her to be 8. Look, folks, have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy all this amazing football that's about to be on. We'll see you back here same time next week. Peace.
Yes, ma'am.